The pronoun people were just like 2 seconds. They're driving me up a wall. It's going to be more than 2 seconds. But these people, every time you meet them, it's always, hi, my name is Jessica. My pronouns are they, them. What are your pronouns? Jessica, take that shit somewhere else. Take it somewhere else, away from me. I don't care where the fuck you go. Go to Pronoun Island with all your pronoun friends and go pronoun out over there. I literally cannot take it anymore. This grocery store I go to, this is why I'm bringing this up. I love this grocery store. It's amazing. But these people, there's a lot of like pronoun and like they, them and like whatever kind of people happening in there, which is fine. Get your fucking money. I don't care. Like, I don't care if you're like that. I don't care. Don't push that shit onto me because they constantly are asking me, what are your pronouns? They've chased me around the grocery store, chased me through aisles I want to make sure I get your correct pronouns, which I can get that you're trying to be inclusive, but now you're invading my personal space. And I get that this can be a little confusing for a lot of you, like pronoun people and like just whatever, everyone in general. I'm a gay man that's feminine with long hair. That's it. That's literally it. It's so simple. Leave it at that. Like, literally leave it at that. Stop making it complicated. Stop coming into my space. Stop assuming that I have a special pronoun that I like to go by. No, I don't. I don't. Stop assuming everybody wants to go by a special pronoun. If you want to go do all that, again, go to Pronoun Land with all your pronoun friends and do pronoun shit over there. You can all discuss the dictionary and decide what word you want to be called next. I don't give a shit. But leave the rest of us alone.
All religion is used to justify misogyny and harm to others, be it through control of behavior, thoughts, or morals. However, religion appears to be impossible to remove from the human animal. It serves as a comfort and a way to deal with the inevitable mortality and unanswerable questions about life. What one person views as an acceptable form of control, however, is not one that is universally agreed upon. In the United States, at least, there is a common adage to live and let live. What this means is that one's beliefs are typically private and not expected of others to participate with them. It is impolite and considered annoying to try and convert others to your belief system or to hold them to the standards within. Groups which do try to convert others also tend to be very restrictive, such as Mormons and evangelical Christians, and thus are disliked outside of their own circles. This dislike and hostility is actually counted on to keep young Jehovah's Witnesses from exploring outside of their bubbles, and thus from noticing the elements of their environment which are manipulative and detrimental to their own health and happiness.
I make TikToks about how dangerous it is to join the Jehovah's Witnesses. Feel free to ask me anything. There are currently thousands of people who are trapped within the religion that many don't realize. They are physically trapped in there because there's too much at stake if they leave. They call themselves PMOs. You can find them online. They post anonymously regularly and explain how they're trapped. So this is just a public service announcement about the dangers of joining the Jehovah's Witness religion.
One can easily see how gender ideology often serves as a replacement for religion in an increasingly secular world. Except, whereas religion is often private and not imposed upon or required of friends or other non-believers, everyone is expected to capitulate to gender ideology. The question, what are your pronouns, is akin to asking, what church do you go to? It assumes that being a believer is the norm, and in turn forces one to either capitulate and agree to the existence of a gendered soul by playing along, or to potentially escalate the situation by offending the asker. And, of course, while it is a perfectly acceptable response to tell a Christian coworker that you don't go to church or don't believe in God, gender ideology is presented as an authentic and secular truth. Thus, denying participation becomes viewed as a wider sign of being disagreeable or worse, bigoted.
So, now you know the difference between gender identity and gender expression, but you may be wondering to yourself, I've heard people call me cisgender before. What does that mean? Well, I'll tell you. Let's take a trip all the way back to the day that you were born. So, when you popped out, as we all do, the doctor took a look at you and assigned you a gender. Now, this is has a whole host of problems on its own because of intersex individuals, but we don't have to go into that in this video. Suffice it to say, you were assigned boy or girl. Now, cis is the prefix meaning on the same side. So cisgender means that you identify with that gender that you were assigned at birth. Trans is the prefix meaning across. So transgender people are people that do not identify with the gender that they were assigned at birth. And it's as simple as that.
And yet, this question has been added to so many forms, from job applications to academia. In the English language, she is used to refer to women, he to men, and they to a group of multiple people or someone of unknown sex. There are exceptions, and there are times when this is not the case. But the point of language is to communicate, or in other words, to exchange information. As much as trans rights activists like to pretend otherwise, the sex of the person one is speaking about is important information. The importance of pronouns, though, is a stance that they do support, but only on their own terms and in reference to gender ideology, not biological sex.
Hi, Benji here, and this is why it's important to respect the pronouns of others. We all have pronouns, and the most common are he, him, she, her, and they, them. But some have pronouns that aren't these, like neopronouns, for example, which are a newer category of pronoun. It's important to use everyone's correct pronouns. It's also not anyone's place to question or invalidate the pronouns of someone else. Pronouns hold significant meaning for a lot of trans, non-binary, and gender non-conforming people. When you question or deliberately misuse someone's pronouns, you invalidate their identity and contribute towards discrimination. You also invalidate the struggles that those who exist outside of the heteronormative gender binary have gone through and still go through, just to be seen as the people they truly are in the world today. Other people's pronouns are not up to us to decide. Hope that helps. Bye.
Sex is immutable, and gender is how one is socialized and oppressed based on their sex. But under the cult of gender identity, referring to the label and associated stereotypes attached to it, reigns supreme. Everyone has a gender identity, which either correlates with or goes against their sex. In other words, a man must be masculine to be a man, and if he is not, he must be a woman. A woman must be feminine to be a woman, and if not, she must be a man. If one does not like all stereotypes associated to one sex or the other, known as having a personality, they can also identify as non-binary or some other kind of gender special. Not only does this concept rely on faith and personal belief in a gendered soul, but it assumes that everyone else does too, and if they don't, they just aren't educated enough to know better.
Okay, it's really ironic that I got this comment specifically on a video where I was talking about cult think and thought control, thought stopping techniques that shut down reality testing and rejecting critical thinking. The comment is, a woman is anyone who says they're a woman. This is a total logical argument. This goes nowhere and it says nothing. So if I said a wingblot is anyone who says they're a wingblot, that doesn't give you any information about what a wingblot is. This is a thought-stopping technique, and it doesn't tell you anything. Also, it's a dehumanizing tactic. It turns a woman who is a fully embodied, whole human being on a very particular developmental path, it turns a woman into an abstract construct that anyone of any sex can claim. So it's dehumanizing. Also, it's objectifying because it makes woman into a presentation that you can put on. So this is a problem. It also denies women the opportunity to fight for their rights based on the characteristic of sex. We still live in a culture where sex-based violence is a major problem for women and girls. And women and girls need language to speak about their bodily needs as well as to speak about their political concerns, to advocate for sex-based safeguarding provisions. If we turn women into an abstract identity construct that anyone of any sex can claim, it means that women can no longer say no. They no longer have the right of consent because it means men and boys can self-identify into any of women's spaces that they want to. So it takes away women's right of consent. So this is very harmful to women and girls. This is why I don't advocate for it. Also, this is just utterly meaningless. It turns woman into something that is meaningful, that pertains to our physical experiences, our embodiment, our holistic nature, and turns us into something that is absolutely abstract and objectified. So I reject this way of thinking, and I point out it's a thought-stopping technique. It's a way a cultist would think about something, because there is no critical thinking in it. There is no reality testing. All right, I'm going to leave it at that.
The air of condescension that permeates gender ideology can be seen in proclamations that non-Western societies had third genders, or with haughty laughter at those who reject their labels and are unable to articulate it well. For one, non-Western societies had misogyny and homophobia too, even before colonialism, and thus structures to accommodate or punish men and women who rejected gender roles existed. And second, not everyone is great at debating or communicating ideas that have never needed such defense before. It takes a man and a woman to make a baby, which the woman then builds in her womb for 9 months and then births. We all know what a woman is.
Okay, so first you said a woman is someone who lives the life of a woman. So woman means woman. You said the same thing. Okay, a woman is somebody who identifies as a woman. So I can identify as a woman whenever I want.
Okay, let me clarify by using a different analogy. Try to define the term cool. We all understand what I mean when I say something is cool, right? We mean it's in fashion, and that's pretty much what the actual definition says, something that is fashionably attractive or impressive. And for me, a term like cool is very similar to something like gender, right? Because what's cool to me isn't necessarily going to be what's cool to you. And there's also the social aspect, what we socially consider is cool or in fashion. And then it also depends on the time period that you're born into and the location you're in. That determines what's cool or not. For example, when I was around 9 to 12 years old, these were all the rage. This is what made you cool back then. But then as a teenager growing up in the 2000s, this is what all the cool kids were doing. This is what they all look like. And all these things, right, depend on the generation you were born into and your location. This is what was cool for a 2000s UK teenager. And that's just like gender, right? What it means to be a man or a woman depends on the time and location and culture that you're talking about, just like cool does. Defining any term like man or woman or cool kind of takes the joy out of what that word represents in the first place, right? Like, trying to narrow down what we mean by cool makes cool not cool anymore. Does that make sense? Because if you try and ask someone, oh, why is this thing cool? Or why do you think that thing is cool? You just go, well, it just is. Like, it just is cool. And sure, you could say that's a circular definition, like a woman is someone who lives the life of a woman or identifies as a woman. Cool is just something that is cool, but there's nothing inherently wrong with a circular definition like that. I still know what you mean by those terms, and that's because there's no objective thing that we can point to and be like, that's what cool is, or that's what a man is, that's what a woman is, because without humans those terms wouldn't exist. Whereas something more objective like shapes, for example, triangles, squares and circles will always exist whether we were here or not, but the concepts of man, woman and cool, those wouldn't exist without us. We make them up subjectively. And none of us will ever agree on what makes a person cool, right? We might say, oh, I think that person's cool, another person might not. That person themselves might identify as cool, but to the outside world, no one thinks that they are cool. That's just like gender. And we don't use terms like cool man or woman because they have 100% perfect objective reasoning behind them. We use them because these terms have social utility, right? We're trying to describe something in our world that we interact with socially. And arguing over what makes a man or what makes a woman is just a way for bigots to exercise their transphobia. They don't really care about finding the answer, they just want to stall the conversation. The beginning and end of any conversation around trans people should be, they deserve rights, as long as they're not hurting anyone, leave them alone.
Getting caught up in metaphysical definitions to include those who like femininity and equate it with womanhood, or nitpicking definitions to force the inclusion of men, might be a fun intellectual exercise for some, but the treatment of these philosophical debates as practical is detrimental for women's rights. Without the ability to communicate commonalities and shared experiences, it becomes impossible to make political demands. Furthermore, even amongst those who play pretend, it is evident what a woman is. If you are asked to bring 10 chairs and instead bring 10 horses, under the argument that a four-legged item that you sit on is a chair, and thus a horse applies, it's obvious that you are being willfully pedantic. While such an experience might be frustrating when hosting a party, the result of being unwilling to define woman, and it is always woman under debate, never man, because man is treated as the normal from which woman is perpetually othered, is that women are unable to have private spaces, unable to communicate without being bogged down with demands of inclusionism, and are unable to make political demands. Additionally, the assumption of all gender nonconformity as participation in the cult creates a social pressure to conform. After all, butch women are just trans men who haven't come out yet, and feminine gay men are better suited as trans women. Not only does the Church of Gender promise acceptance and community, but it corroborates long-standing pressure to conform by offering a loophole to access heterosexuality, or at least a sad mimicry of it.
So I'm going to get into trans and mental delusion and everything because it's been called that before. When I was in my early 20s, I lived in Olympia, Washington, and I had a girlfriend at the time, and she told me, "You are a boy." And I was like, not so sure about that. But she pressed it enough. She's like, "Look at the way you dress, look at your mannerisms, look at the way you talk." I'm like, okay, well, I still talk the same. Still have these same mannerisms. Today I wear boots and jeans. With them I wear girl pants, like Miss Me's Rock Revivals, etc., etc. Doesn't matter. But she was damn convinced. Yeah, you're a guy. So I went with it, wrote this page essay that she wanted me to write as to why you are. I started binding. I went with this stupid different name. I still remember it. It's dumb. And, went with that little acceptance. Yeah. And that was in my early 20s. Once I broke up with her, got away from those friends, I wanted nothing to do with that. And I immediately stopped. And I thought I was so glad that I am who I am today. Thank God. Oh my gosh. Really enjoy just being me. I look at the younger generation today and what they're doing to kids and how easy it is for their minds and to just flop that. And it's like a mental delusion, because I was a full-ass grown adult convinced by one person, their friends supported me, and it was like instant. Fine. Okay. And if I hadn't have gone away from that, I have no idea what would have happened. I don't. So do I think it's a mental delusion? Yeah, I do. Are there people who are trans and stuff? Well, you know what? Fine. But I really do feel like it's not okay. And especially for the younger kids, it's not okay. They're way too young. If that happened to me in my early 20s and I was convinced that quick, imagine these younger kids with just a single teacher telling them, "You are not a boy, you're a girl," or the other way around.
This is often referred to in the trans community as being an egg. Michigan State University's Gender and Sexuality Campus Center defines the term as being slang for someone who is trans but doesn't know it yet. Someone who is an embryo of the trans person they will eventually hatch into. Anyone who exhibits gender nonconformity is referred to as one, and often being in this state is an excuse for fetishistic behavior, such as wearing the undergarments of female family members. Any act can then be justified when it's tied to religion, and gender is no different. Cutting off family members for not immediately accepting a change in identity? Fine. Abandoning a wife and kids to explore being female? Fine. Forcing an infant to waste calories suckling on a man's teat? If it's for gender, then there can be no criticism, only blind acceptance. People are allowed to have dangerous or idiotic religious beliefs. The issue comes when they are forced upon others. In any other situation, the group in question is not looked upon fondly for forcing their beliefs on others, but gender ideology differs in that it pretends to be secular. Whereas the government is supposed to be divested of theological influence, even if not always the case in practice, gender ideology stands out as a cult for how pervasive it is. It has infiltrated scientific research, law, and everyday life, and any attempt to point out how gender is unscientific, how it negates empirical research and research-based policymaking, or works against gay liberation and women's rights is painted as heresy.
So today I want to talk about part of cult think and how it works. Of course, I am applying this to the trans cult ideology. This is one portion of the BITE model, which is Stephen Hassan. He is an expert on cults. Today, the part of the BITE model I want to talk about is thought control. So the areas of thought control: internalizing the group's doctrine as truth, their map of reality, thought-stopping techniques, changing identity into a pseudo-identity, and labeling alternative beliefs as evil, and as well as confusion techniques. So these are the techniques that we see happening within the ideology. First of all, the map of reality. So they have changed reality from being a embodied, lived, sexually dimorphic, just like all of the other mammals, into this one we hear in the ideology: sex isn't real, sex is a spectrum. This is obviously not true. Sometimes we hear, oh, sex is real, but gender is real too. These projected gender roles onto bodies, and that it's possible to have an identity that does not match your body is insane. We also hear the thought-stopping techniques. So these mantras that go nowhere. Trans women are women. Trans women are women. This is a thought-stopping technique. It doesn't say anything. It's tautological. It goes around in a circle, and it's ultimately meaningless. Obviously, changing their identity into a pseudo-identity. All of these, there's thousands of claimed identities: demi-boy, demi-girl, frog self, cat gender, aeroflux, demiflux, non-binary, all kinds of these bizarre identities. These are pseudo-identities. They have nothing to do with being in your lived, authentic body. Labeling alternative beliefs as evil or not useful. Anyone is labeled a bigot, a transphobe, a TERF, a right-wing, far extremist. So anyone who challenges, they don't deal with arguments. They won't deal with trying to explain their perspective, trying to explain. This is why so many people ask, what is a woman? They won't explain their perspective. They will only try to shut down thought, insult others, stop it from happening. And then hypnosis. This is part of the propaganda that we see in Hollywood, in the media that pushes this, and as well as in literal sissy hypno porn that hypnotizes people into believing this. Sorry, it's been so in and out, but I hope that this comes across.
Under the guise of calling out bigotry. And when one pushes back against the forced secularization of gender, even though it's a religion, one is often told that not sharing in those beliefs means not wanting trans people to exist. An odd statement all around, given that Christians do not consider non-believers to think that Christians don't exist. In any other group, non-belief from other people is simply a fact of life, and one must go on working and living alongside those who disagree with them anyway. This is what tolerance is, and unfortunately, the cult of gender has none. This, dear viewers, is where we part. I saw a really great TikTok, which I'm sure I'll include when I'm editing this, that got me thinking on this topic again, because I have previously talked about transgenderism, the gender identity, gender ideology as religion, and I will try to remember to link that to this video. But point being, it's not based on anything but faith, a blind belief in something that cannot be seen or measured or recorded because it's all metaphysical, it's all in their head. And the thing is, in practice, yes, religion influences law because we have religious people who have roles in the legal system. But it's never really been, in the US at least, that you've been able to put, you have to go read the Bible or the Torah or whatever other religious book when you go to school. You have to pray before you come into the building. You have to do X, Y, and Z, and presenting that as being somehow scientific and separate from religion. That's what's getting me here. Is there's a pretense here that this isn't a religious belief, that it's actually just truth. It's logical. It makes sense, and it's not. And I'm really resenting having to play pretend. And you know what? Actually, I lied a little bit, because this is actually tied a bit to the veganism thing. It's not, it's pretty well known there's some stereotypes about lesbians, right? That the feminists and lesbians and vegans all kind of overlap. The crunchy granola women, you can kind of expect the Subaru and those ugly sandals, Birkenstocks, and cargo shorts. You can expect all that stuff together, right? And that's fine. I have plenty of friends who are vegetarian and vegan, and we get along fine, because I enjoy food. I'm a food lover. The difference between like the normal people who you just don't share a diet with and the ones who really make people hate a certain group is the evangelicalism, the attempt to convert others, and to not have any tolerance for people having differing beliefs. I don't know if she'll watch this, but my girlfriend and I were talking about veganism, and we were talking about zoos. And you know what? Having a debate where there was no aggression, there wasn't any sense of pressure, I changed my mind. Yeah, I do think that zoos are taking a lot of money that could go towards better sources. And while I think that there are some battles I'm just not going to win, I understand her perspective now, and I agree with her. Wow, the things that can happen when you're willing to not treat non-believers as scum. Anyway, that whole concept was what got me into this video idea. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. You can leave a comment in the comment section down below, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!